1954, on the Near West Side, a gang called the Egyptian Cobras was started. The gang allegedly broke away from the Imperial Champlains and was founded by James Cogwell. Originally formed to protect the black community that lived around the Maxwell and Halsted area of the West Side. The Egyptian Cobras was mostly non-violent and selected the name Egyptian Cobra due to the Egyptian cobra snake being the most dangerous snake in the world and its venom killing quickly. And because the Egyptian cobra was a symbol of sovereignty of the pharaohs in Egyptian mythology. It also represents the symbolism of their African ancestors and their divinity. By 1958, the Egyptian Cobras was a large gang in the North Lawndale area. The Cobras' biggest rivals were the Clovers. Also in 1958, in the Fuller Park area, another group of teens calling themselves the Egyptian Cobras formed to fight back against racial issues with Irish gangs from the Canaryville neighborhood. The South Side Cobras knew about the West Side Cobras and were still in the Cogwell family, but were two separate groups. The South Side Cobras formed at 43rd at Preston in Fuller Park. Within no time, the gang spread to Inglewood, Washington Park, and the Grand Boulevard communities. The focus of this video will be the South Side Cobras. Racial tensions between blacks and whites were intensifying in Inglewood due to Inglewood changing from a mostly white neighborhood to a predominantly black neighborhood. The construction of the Dan Ryan Expressway only added to the changes. The residents of Fuller Park and Washington Park were uprooted and landed in Inglewood. Greaser gangs were enraged by this, and the Cobras fought white gangs like the Sons of Italy and others. Soon, the Cobras had a rivalry with a black group known as the Devil's Disciples. By the end of the year, it was a rivalry that was more prevalent due to white flight. Leonard Johnson led the Cobras and was the co-founder of this chapter. In December of 1959, Johnson was imprisoned, ending his leadership of this section. The Egyptian Cobras moved into the Black Belt at 45th and State in the Grand Boulevard neighborhood. This is the beginning of this neighborhood being a permanent part of the Cobras' history. Moving north, the Cobras migrated to Cabrini Green housing projects in 1958. In the 1150 to the 1152 buildings started by Solomon King Taylor, who ran that section and was most likely the co-founder. The Cobras were contested by gangster disciples over these buildings. The Cobras also settled in the Marshall Field apartments when they were first formed. The Cobras also took over a large area in the Dearborn Home Projects in the Douglas community and the Wentworth Garden Projects in the Armour Square neighborhood. This neighborhood bordered Fuller Park. Persian Road is a divider between these two neighborhoods. The Cobras spread to 49th and St. Lawrence and from 51st to 55th and from Cottage Grove to Woodlawn. The 49th and St. Lawrence Cobras became known as the Gutter. The Cobras referred to female Cobras as Cobrettes. In 1959, the Cobras formed an alliance with the King Cobras, forming the Egyptian King Cobras in Inglewood and Fuller Park. According to the newspaper reports, by 1960, there were 500 members of the Egyptian Cobras on the South Side and hundreds more in the two West Side chapters and on the North Side in Cabrini Green and Marshall Field neighborhoods. Also in 1960, all branches of the Cobras went on a violent and murderous rampage that made the newspaper. Between 1960 and 1962, Henry John Ringo Ponder led groups of Cobras on a murderous crime spree. The spree started in November of 1960 when Ponder, James Braden, and Jonathan Phillips robbed a tailor shop at 53rd and Woodlawn, beating the 72-year-old shop owner, Lester Wolf, to death. Ponder was already on trial for the murder of Lucius O'Neill, a security guard at a laundromat on 51st and Cottage Grove, on August 19, 1961. Ponder was convicted of his crimes in 1962. That's when 17-year-old Henry Mickey Cogwell stepped up to lead the Southside Cobras. Cogwell moved into the newly built Robert Taylor homes, and Cogwell resided in the area of 51st to 53rd and State. Cogwell was heavily involved in the policy racket that was controlled by the Italian Mafia. This placed the Cobras within organized crime. Mickey Cobra was the brother of the founder of the West Side Cobras, James Cogwell. The Cobras took Building 4555 and the 4525 buildings in Robert Taylor. They also took the 4101 building near 40th Place and Federal. The Cobras also took Building 5326, 5322, and Building 5323 that formed a U-shape. These buildings became known as the Hole. Cogwell moved into these buildings with his family, making him the direct supervisor of the Hole. In 1962, the Cobras squashed their war with the Blackstone Rangers after Mickey Cogwell proposed an alliance idea to Theodis Clark. At first, the idea was rejected by Clark, but then eventually accepted, and this is how the Cobras and the Stones first came together. The Cobras became now known as the Cobra Stones.
I was 17.
And he was how old?
I was 16.
And the way you met was how?
Well, we used to fight each other. Cobras.
Kenny Morrow was a high-ranking member of the Egyptian Cobras.
We fought against each other for 4 years.
But the Egyptian Cobras couldn't beat the Blackstone Rangers, and if you couldn't beat them, in order to survive, you had to join. Ultimately, 21 gangs would join under the umbrella of the Blackstone Rangers. There would be a ruling council called the Main 21 and a new gang name, the Black P Stone Nation. Some would argue the P stood for power. The nation was 4,000 strong. There were some struggles over leadership, but in the end, it was Jeff Fort who emerged as the man in charge.
The Egyptian Cobras now referred solely to the West Side Cobras. The Cabrini Green and Marshall Field Cobras all became Cobra Stones as well. The West Side Cobras had nothing to do with the Blackstone Rangers or any Cobra Stones. The Mickey Cobras were able to take over more of the Robert Taylors, being led by Joe Bob. In 1968, Mickey Cogwell was appointed the official spokesman for the Black P Stones. Cogwell's brother, Jeremy Pony Soldier Cogwell, was killed on September 8, 1968, outside the entrance of the Robert Taylor homes by the Devil's Disciples, the main gang aligned with the Disciple Alliance. In December of 1968, Jeff Fort led a massive march down State Street, demanding that the city rename State Street after Jerome Cogwell. The Stones smashed windows, cars, and rioted as they marched down the street. This march was also meant to protest the disorderly conduct charge the police were using to harass residents. In January of 1969, an Illinois politician invited Jeff Fort to Nixon's presidential inaugurational ball. Fort declined the invite and sent Mickey Cogwell instead with Herman Moose Holmes, another Main 21 leader. Mickey Cogwell and Rico Cranshaw were the first Stones to bring the nation into the drug business. With help from his mafia associates, the Stones began to sell heroin, prescription teas, and blues. The government funds had run out by this point, and the Stones needed money. The Stones were the first gang to be involved in high-level drug dealing. This is how drug dealing came to the whole. Stones also began robbing other drug dealers. By this point, the Stones were feeling the heat from the vice lords, so James moved to the South Side to join his brother Mickey. Mickey Cogwell and the Cobras policed the police in their community, receiving government grants to feed children in the Fuller Park neighborhood before the free breakfast program was started in schools. Mickey Cogwell also worked as an organizer for the Southside Union. In 1970, the commander of the Gang Intelligence Unit for the Chicago Police portrayed Cogwell as the link between gangs and organized crime, particularly the Chicago Outfit. In 1972, Cogwell was convicted, along with Fort and others, for defrauding a federal government grant to the tune of $972,000. Jeff Fort was sentenced to 5 years in prison. He appointed Mickey Cogwell to be the interim leader and to keep Eugene Harrison out of power if he got paroled. Cogwell was running the entire BPSN nation on the streets. Cogwell was still known as more of an activist, which kept the press off of him because he wasn't seen as a gangster kingpin. Cogwell got out in 1976 and started organizing McDonald's fast food workers, attempting to make the former Peastone Nation a political organization. But by doing this, he was interfering with the profits of Chicago's organized crime, which could be a reason that Cogwell was killed. In March of 1976, Fort was released from prison, and he announced that he had converted to the Nation of Islam and now expected select members to convert to Islam as well and become El Rookins. Jeff asked Mickey Cogwell to join El Rookin, but Mickey declined. But allegedly, there were no hard feelings. Many people began to speculate that Jeff Fort ordered the death of Mickey Cogwell on February 25, 1977. Mickey was walking home at 3:45 a.m. to his Auburn Gresham home after being dropped off. Someone approached Cogwell and he began to run. Cogwell was shot in the back and Cogwell fell to the ground, and then the gunman stood over Cogwell and shot 2 more times in the back and fled. No one was ever identified as the killer, but it is alleged that Fort ordered the hit because Cogwell spoke out about the new Islamic doctrines, but that has never been verified. The Cobras changed the name of the organization to the Mickey Cobras and wanted to separate from the Black Peastones once again, becoming an individual organization. The Cobras fell in line with an alliance in prison that included the El Rookins, Vice Lords, and the Black Peace Stones in April 1978. Relations between the Cobras and the El Rookins were not good, even after being bound by the People's Alliance. According to court documents, in 1985, Jeff Fort ordered the murders of several high-ranking Cobras over drug turf in the Woodlawn neighborhood. Mickey ran the racket like a mob boss while still helping the community and being active in politics. Mickey taught black men to stand up to white gangs in the 1950s. Mickey also rebuilt the nation when he took over, and his legacy remains with Cobra's leadership to this day.